China just failed. They not only failed, they chose not to inform the rest of the world.
Had they acted promptly, there may well have been a possibility this could have been contained as a regional outbreak. Instead, it became a global pandemic.
On the 11th, 12th of January, the genome was mapped and sent out to all interested scientists around the world. That was early. Those who just say, well, if China had sorted it out earlier, it would never have come to us. Rubbish. I don't believe it. That's wishful thinking, or rather, it's blame thinking. Would it have spread around the world? Yes, it would have spread around the world. It would still have spread around the world because this is an extraordinary infectious disease. Here, it's very important to understand, China was the first. When China was confronted with the problems, no one else knew anything about it. China didn't know anything about it. That made its task much, much more difficult. So I think that that's a very important mitigating factor in China's response. It couldn't look elsewhere and say, how did they do it? It had to do it itself. The United States lost 2.5 months not bothering to learn from China. I mean, America never had the problem, what is this virus? Because everyone knew what the virus was. Inevitably, China made mistakes. The bigger your problem, the bigger your crisis, the more likely you are to make mistakes. But by mid-January, it's clear that the whole situation changed. And China, from that moment, mobilized in a most extraordinary, brilliant fashion, actually. When it got hold of the problem, what an impressive performance. Well, it's become a kind of Western pastime, actually, to question China's numbers. It's not new. Ever since the 1990s and the beginning of China's economic rise, there have always been many Western skeptics about China's growth rate. They were always saying that China's figures aren't true. They went on and on and on about it. Actually, as we say in English, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and the reality is that the Chinese economy, everyone can see, has been completely transformed to now the second largest economy in the world. So if all those statistics were false, that couldn't have been the case. And of course, keeping statistics on something like COVID-19 is very difficult. I mean, in Britain now, please don't believe the figures. The really strong attacks on China on the statistics have really only come very recently. And I think they've come very recently because they're thinking America's already had whatever the latest figure is. What does that make the West look like? What does it say about the state of the West? There is a strain of criticism which says, look, China is using COVID-19 to win friends and influence people around the world. Whatever China does is seen in a negative light. Even if what China's doing is positive, they'll see it in a negative light. That's the reality. There are sections who are very opposed to China. China should intensify its efforts on this front. And where there have been criticisms of equipment and so on, make sure there aren't. That those criticisms can't be made. But I don't think we should reduce this to a question of national prestige. This is a humanitarian gesture. It shouldn't be over-politicized. It should be done from a humanitarian rather than political perspective.